cute shirt. Call me after school. We can go shopping.
1, 2, 3, go.
Guess who I hung out with today?
Evie Zamora?
Well, you could really help me if I lived here. Hey, boys. Have you had anything to eat today?
Mom, stop with the food thing already!
She's starting to scare me. You can get more piercings.
What's that on your shirt?
I need this $860 in your purse.
We jacked it, okay? Tracy was playing Barbies before she met Evie.
I'm really starting to lose it. No bra, no panties.
Okay, so this is going to be a different analysis, but I wanted to talk about a film that my sister and I loved growing up. Very controversial, but thankfully we didn't follow in their footsteps. If you have girls, if you have kids, I would say I would caution you all before allowing your kids to watch this movie because it was kind of controversial in my opinion. But the film, obviously, what was depicted in the beginning is 13. And it was a movie of two young girls who were pretty much wreaking havoc in their city, in their families, amongst their friend group. They were just rebellious. They were just out and about doing their own thing. They were not following any rules and regulations, had no business doing the things that they were doing, at their age, as young as they were. And it was just dangerous, girls roaming all throughout town, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. You never know who's out there, but I wanted to make this video today referencing this film as a cautionary tale. I will say this, when we were younger and we were watching the film, it was more so about romanticizing this idea of like exploring your identity when you're that young and being around certain friends and having fun and just being free and carefree. But I want to utilize this as a cautionary tale, specifically the company that you keep, being mindful of the company that you keep, because who you align yourself with absolutely dictates the trajectory of your life. It's true. And you all know I'm a believer. I'm a Christ follower to be exact. And there's a scripture that talks about how bad company corrupts good morals. There are other scriptures that talks about, or other translations of this particular scripture that states bad company corrupts good character. What it's getting at is eventually if you are around someone who is operating in corruption, or if their life isn't necessarily together, unfortunately, it will rub off on you if you're not able to influence them to move up, right? And to do better and to improve. So with that being said, I want to break down how important it is to be mindful of the company that you keep a little bit more in this video today. So what stood out to me as I revisited the film, certain clips from the film, is I realized that the mother started to call her daughter out about the fact, like, you have never been this way. You've never acted this way. How does this happen? Because of the company that you keep, the people that you allow in. On the spiritual membership, and I strongly encourage you guys to check it out. Now, I will say this. If you are someone who you're not necessarily open to different spiritual perspectives and things like that, that's completely fine. The membership will not be for everyone, but the membership is rooted in validity. It's not mumbo jumbo. It's real principles, real spiritual experiences. And in one of my most recent videos on the spiritual membership playlist was me talking about the exchanging of gifts. And to briefly paraphrase, in that video, I talked about the exchange of a physical gift in exchange for a spiritual one. But in the context of this video today, I want people to understand that there is always an exchange with who you interact with. If you think that you're having a casual conversation with someone, you're leaving with something. That's what people don't understand. There's actually scientific research, and I think it's called emotional contagion. I think that's the phenomenon. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, you guys. But there has been scientific research that showed that people's emotions can transfer onto another individual. Have you all ever been in a situation where you were in a room and everything was fine? I'm gonna give two different scenarios. Say you were in a room and everything was fine, but when one person walked into the room, there was a really heavy and dark energy. Or maybe that person had very antsy, panicky energy and it made you feel like you were walking on eggshells. Contrarily, say that you felt a little bit uneasy, but when another person came into your vicinity, you felt more calm and peaceful and at ease. It's because energy speaks before people do. So with that being said, no matter who you're encountering in life, you always have to keep in the back of your mind, there is some kind of exchange that is happening. Now, it's our responsibility to make sure that we have parameters in place to protect our own energy, right? But we have to be careful of individuals' energy leaking into what we have going on. I think some people also refer to this as like energy leaks. And even putting energy leaks into context for this video today, or, the scientific phenomenon known as emotional contagion. When we break down the impact someone's energy has on us just by simply being in the same room or in proximity to us, and we don't even necessarily have to know them, imagine the impact someone has on us that we're calling a friend, that we're calling a family member, that we're calling a romantic partner, that we're calling a business partner. Imagine the kind of impact that they're having on you on a day-to-day basis every time you give them your ear. Every time you give them your mind. Imagine the impact that their words have on you. There was another study where they talked about how even your tone and your voice, words have frequencies. Life and death are in the power of the tongue, especially the intentions when you say certain things, your heart. Because I also believe that frequency, when we talk about speech in this scientific research, I believe the frequency that they were getting at is a person's intentions. Because you could be in a situation where someone is telling you everything that you want to hear, but spiritually you're rejecting it. Something still feels off. You're like, this person is telling me one thing, but I feel like there's something else going on behind the scenes. I don't feel settled. I don't feel easy. I'll never forget, I was in high school, and I really believe that this woman was planted in my life, and she was like my spiritual advisor. I really do believe this. And it was a friend of mine at the time. It was their mother. And I remember we were doing an extracurricular activity. And then at the end of the year, that's when they started to tell us at the end of this activity, we had to do all of these extra steps. And I remember I was like, I'm just not convinced. So what my friend at the time, what her mother had us do was go in and ask the person directly. So we went and we asked the individual in charge of the extracurricular activity, like what the next steps were again. And my friend at the time was like doing all the talking and conversing with them. But as I've stated several times on my channel, I'm more of the observer than I am the speaker. I've always been this way. Only time that I speak is like if I need to. So that's why me having these platforms is so ironic. And I'm sure people in my like immediate life think the same thing. They're probably like laughing, like, yo, we never would expect that this woman would talk this much. But nevertheless, I remember my friend was like having a conversation with them, and she was really convinced by what they were saying. But as I was looking at them, I was like, this guy is lying. He is lying. I couldn't put my finger on why. And at the time, we weren't even 17 yet. We were really young. So after the discussion happened, we went back to my friend's to my friend's mother, and we had a conversation to debrief. And my friend was telling, her mother, like, yeah, he told us that we have to do this, and mom, we really got to follow suit with it. And the mom, I didn't even realize that she was like paying attention to my body language. And she stops her daughter and she looks at me and she says, you tell me what you think of the situation. I said, I'm not gonna lie to you, I feel like he was lying. I said, I can't put my finger on it, but I really feel like that man was lying. And so she was like, And so she took my word for it. And sure enough, you guys, the man was lying. He told a bold-faced lie. And I was like, I knew it, but I couldn't explain it because the way he was like communicating, it made sense. But something about his demeanor, I was like, I am not convinced with this dude. I feel like he's lying. I feel like he's lying. I really do. I feel like he's telling a bold-faced lie. And lo and behold, I ended up being right. So even when we talk about someone speaking certain things to us, pay attention to the intentions behind it. And sometimes the only thing that you can kind of base your decision off of is how you feel when someone is speaking to you. Going back to that scientific finding, where they conducted a study and people were speaking to plants. And the people who were assigned to speak negative things to the plants, they realized that those plants either withered, they didn't grow, they didn't prosper, right? They weren't abundant, they weren't fruitful. But the individuals who were instructed to speak life and speak positively to their plants grew and they were flourishing. So it was a drastic difference. And I believe it's because of the frequency. Typically, when you're speaking positive about someone or something, there's a certain cadence to it. There's a certain energy that comes with positivity versus someone who is speaking negatively to you or negatively about you. There's a corresponding energy for that as well. So with that being said, if that's based off of just words, right? And you having a brief encounter with someone, maybe at, a cash register at your job, how much of an impact do you think a person who has intimate access to you on a day-to-day basis, how much do you think they're impacting your life? You can only imagine how much impact they have on your life because of the access they have to your ear and to your mind. So you really have to be intentional about the company you keep, because the company you keep will absolutely dictate your life. It will dictate the trajectory of your life, whether you are aware of it or not. And sometimes it's not just about if someone isn't necessarily striving for more, for example, and you get comfortable with being complacent. On this channel, we dissect things deeper than that. You guys are familiar with that. It goes beyond, the surface level, the possessions and the trinkets. It goes beyond that. But I'm more so getting at when someone is speaking negatively to you, they have negative intentions for you, it can warp your mindset. You'll have a limited belief system. You'll feel like there's always something wrong with you. This is why you have to be careful of people who speak at you and not speak to you. People who are always talking down to you, talking down about you, you have to do this, you're not doing enough. That's a red flag. In my opinion, it's in your best interest to start separating yourself and cutting this person off, at least from intimate access, because if you're not careful, that person's words will start to have an impact on your life. But nevertheless, to wrap this video up, I'm going to read from an excerpt in the book, All Strings Attached, The Queen's Quarrel. Pure pitfall. Watch the company that you keep. The grass is greener principle is also prevalent in social comparison. The saying is true, it's best to mind the business that pays you. And that excerpt connects with the film that we're referencing for this video today, because how the young woman's life ended up turning upside down is she was aspiring to be associated with the girl who was deemed as popular in school. She had a lot of attention from the guys. She was popular amongst the girls. The girls wanted to be her, but she didn't know what came with that lifestyle. She did not know what she was signing up for when she was fighting to gain association with this person. And lo and behold, as this person started to gain access to their life, their family, their home, their day-to-day routine, their life actually took a turn for the worse. Their life was turned upside down. So in the context of friendships, you really have to be careful of the company you keep. Another thing is focus on your own lane, focus on your own race. The grass is not always greener. You're looking at some people and you're like, wow, they're doing this and they have this. And sometimes they may be trying to convince you that they're just in such a better place, because you do not know what's really hiding behind the rose-colored glasses. Okay? So that's all that I have for this video today. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. But of course, I want to hear you all's comments, opinions, perspectives, as well as personal experiences with the situation, such as what was presented in the film 13. I want to thank you all again so much for tuning in, and I look forward to speaking to you guys in the next analysis, babes. Take care.